The Legends lineup in Transformers Cybertron was a bit of a different one. Instead of trying to focus on small-scale Transformers that connect with the larger ones, sort of like the Micromasters and their bases, or the Minicons in the Unicron trilogy, which actually moved into Cybertron as well, these followed the Spy Changer formula, which is smaller versions of larger characters. Although this time, they had a bit of an upgrade, featuring ball joints galore and entirely accurate transformations. I've already reviewed a couple of them, and they do match their source material to the T. In fact, I can actually confirm that now that I have the Cybertron Optimus Prime. Of course, last year I discussed one good one and one terrible one, so now I think it's time to go back to the good end of the spectrum with one of the best. In fact, he might be just a little bit better than Optimus Prime. Let's bring up the treacherous bastard and see how good he really is. So back in the Cybertron days, they decided to go do the same thing they'd done with Robots in Disguise, which is make smaller versions of the existing characters with almost identical transformations, or very much simplified transformations, meaning that the transformations were essentially scaled down using ball joints as opposed to the heavy ratchet joints and swivels and such. They could do that back in those days because the transformations were very, very simple, especially in the Cybertron line. Later on, they'd have to engineer new transformations for the Movieverse and Prime and Robots in Disguise and even Animated, which I'll discuss later. But right here we have a Legion Legends figure, back then just called Legends, which is pretty much a copy of the Cybertron Starscream, or rather the Galaxy Force Starscream, the Voyager version. Actually, I guess it's also the Supreme version because they upscaled that. I mean, if you actually look at the similarities between the two, because I have the Toys R Us version of the Voyager one, not the stupid blown-up Supreme one, yeah, their transformations are identical. The way the legs fold out, the way the arms fold out. The only thing they haven't included is the way the back section works. That's the only difference. And of course, instead, they've got the Decepticon symbol here instead of on the wings, but, I mean, it works. This is a really, really good downscale. It's almost like a downscaled KO, as opposed to an upscaled KO, which the Supreme version was. And my oh my, what a beautiful figure that is. The paintwork here is exquisite. Most of it's done in this kind of pearly white plastic, sort of a greyish pearl white with a bit of shininess to it, but the metallic red paint is gorgeous, and the purple cockpit here, yeah, the head's visible, but that was a thing on the original toy as well, so it's mimicking that, so I guess it's accurate. They've even got thrusters at the back here. You look at the bottom side, and it's remarkably clean for the size. In fact, I'm not sure you could fit a standpoint in there or not, but you might be able to. You got the nice nose cone here. In fact, I believe that this was the first time we'd seen a Tetrajet in the main line. I'm not sure if Titanium predated that or whether Cybertron came first, but this design, which is coincidentally the War Within design as well, it really works, and it works as an introduction to the Tetrajet. Matter of fact, I'd argue that this rendition of the Tetrajet is more striking than this rendition. But, hey, that's another story for another time, and that's not knocking this figure, because this mold is still a killer mold. And of course, in size comparisons, here we are with our standard Legion figure, and it really goes to show how small the size class has shrunk over the years. A standard Legends figure, although that's Legends and that's Legends. It's so confusing! A standard Siege Micromaster, a not-so-standard LEGO minifigure, and Crumbs. So, as I have mentioned before, the transformation is virtually identical to the Voyager version and the Supreme version, depending on which one you have. You basically come around here. These bits aren't exactly pegged together, they just kind of sit there on friction, but you bring it out on the ball joints, rotate it down, rotate the legs out. Yes, they've got hollow parts, but so did the Voyager version, and fold down the feet. I actually prefer the way the feet work here, because they don't have the full fold in and then fold out again bit that's a bit annoying on the full release. You then rotate this entire chest in there, and it does actually peg in. Then, much like the Voyager version, you bring these up, and you bring the arms down. They don't have a second bend, unfortunately, but they get the job done. Now, instead of folding these down here, this just rotates down like so. It gets the job done. It looks remarkable for the size. Like, dude, seriously, look at how good he looks. There are some bad figures from the Cybertron line, such as, Thundercracker, who I've reviewed the Jetfire version of, but Starscream is not one of those figures. He is utterly gorgeous from head to toe. No visible kibble. Looks exactly like his larger version. Spitting image. Amazing sculpt work. The red paint they chose, the metallic red paint, looks gorgeous. And you know the best part? He retains his gimmick. The swords, well, the sword and the gun in this instant, I think the other one also had a sword and gun, they flip out. There's no cyber key power, but the fact that it manages to do that, which mimics the larger toy, it is astonishing. Like, it's like I'm looking in a mirror image. Okay, colors aside, that's not really the case, but it's like I'm looking in a mirror here, a shrunken down mirror. Although that being said, because you don't get as much movement out here, but this one does, I think I might prefer the Legends version just a little bit. It might have better proportions because of the way that you can move the shoulders out, the articulation helping out the proportions. Maybe just a smidge. I mean, his articulation's virtually identical, which I'll get into thanks to the use of ball joints where, you know, double joints would be, but hey, it really works. Now, if we're discussing his articulation, he does have an ever so slight swivel on his head, but it's really hard to access and I tend not to use it. He's got ball jointed shoulders, of course his weapons move in and out. Nothing in the elbows, unfortunately, because of the way that the parts count is, but hey, I'll take it. He's got better shoulders, which is kind of better than better elbows. He's got ball jointed hips that act as the universal joints, ball jointed knees that act as the thigh swivel over there, and identical foot articulation. So yeah, pretty much a carbon copy of the Voyager version, but hey, it really bloody works. And of course, for size comparisons, here he is next to a standard Legion. Again, the size has decreased in recent years due to inflation and rising plastic costs, but hey, the complexity has not. These are both brilliant figures. Next to your standard Legends figure, your standard Micromaster, your not so standard Lego minifigure, and Crumbs. So he is a little bit big for his size class even by those days' standards, but hey, that doesn't make him any worse. It's not like his plastic's being pushed into every nook and cranny or stretched out over multiple things for the budget. No, you get your money's worth with this figure. He is bloody brilliant. And I suppose I should finish off with a comparison with the other version of the mold that I have, which is coincidentally my introduction to this mold, which was Ramjet, but he's missing a foot, so I didn't really think it was appropriate to review him, so I picked Starscream instead, who is naturally a better figure anyway. So yeah, now, this is an amazing Legends figure that still kicks the shit out of many modern Legends and Micromaster and whatever small-scale figures. He's got brilliant articulation that's only let down by these parts here. Thanks to the way the shoulders work, though, he has a little bit more in that department, so it's pretty much one-for-one levels of articulation. And when you consider the size of it, yeah, I do think it's an improvement. Actually, hang on a second, I just realized I haven't actually put a star on the top of the Christmas tree, so let me just rectify that. There we go. As long as I don't mess with it, it shouldn't fall down or anything. So yes, I think Starscream is probably the best Legends figure out of the Legends of Cybertron line, and if you can get him today, then I highly recommend you do so. In fact, I'd say he's as good as what I think is the best Legion Legends figure we've ever gotten, which is Prime Cliffjumper. So, between that guy and between Cliffjumper, we really can't go wrong. That being said, there is another question. Can you go wrong with non-combining versions of characters who feature combining versions in the same line? I don't know. Let's find out tomorrow.